Several Lions players, including one commander, is facing league discipline while we are just under a week away now from the 2023 NFL draft. Don't mind Doug over there. This is the Fumblerooski Podcast by Power 88 and Secret Weapon Consulting. I'm Adam Wright with CJ Medeiros and Justin Tucker. As always, guys, we have another great show planned for you tonight. So, of course, as I mentioned, we're going to talk a little bit more in depth of the NFL with a series of suspensions they just offered out for the league's violating the league's gambling policy. Pardon my French. And on top of that, we're going to go into more draft coverage and talk about some of the most underrated draft prospects as we head closer to the draft. And we'll go even more in depth this Wednesday when we give our second annual NFL mock draft for the entire 2023 draft. Well, the first round. We're not doing you guys can do the second and third and fourth, fifth rounds on your own time, but we'll give you the main event, the first round soon. But in the meantime, let's get into this coverage with the NFL. So they suspended several key players. Well, some of them key. So among those players, the names were wide receiver Stanley Berryhill, wide receiver Quintez Cephas, safety CJ Moore, and then on this guy's on the Commanders, defensive end Shaka Toney. Tell me if I got that one right.
Yeah, Shaka Toney, that's right.
Okay. The most notable name here, wide receiver, first round pick, Jameson Williams for the Detroit Lions. So the issue here is that he was the first round pick, obviously. He was coming back from an ACL tear. I was pretty excited for this guy's comeback season, potential breakout. He was a guy who I probably would have taken in one of the late fantasy draft rounds. But he's going to be out. He's going to be off the board. We can talk a little bit more about what the Lions do without Jameson Williams and kind of those two sides in particular. But I just wanted to talk about the gambling policy in general. What are you guys' thoughts on that? These players getting disciplined.
CJ, go first.
I guess I need to know what they're gambling on. Do we know? What were they betting on?
I have no idea. It was just online betting.
It was just regular betting, I guess.
This is an issue that I think transcends the NFL. Because I'm not a baseball guy, but I do believe that Pete Rose should be in the Hall of Fame.
Uh-huh.
And I believe that this whole gambling thing is just ridiculous. Truly, it is. And, well, if you're not betting on games, because, look, I understand why the NFL wouldn't want their guys to bet on games, but it's the off season. Just where you care, you know? I mean, am I nuts here?
I kind of agree with the gambling policy, and I think they should be a little on the stricter side on it. Just because if you allow even an inch in gambling, then it could compromise the game because then you get a potential Black Sox scandal in the MLB where they were given money to throw the World Series.
Mm-hmm.
That was a huge problem. Now it happened in 1919, so no one talks about it, but that's something that could potentially happen, which is also partially why Pete Rose was hit so hard once he was caught gambling, because there are situations like that. Now there are situations where, you know, the player was kind of innocent and it was just harmless gambling, and it didn't affect the game. But once you even give an inch, then it could compromise the entire league. So I do kind of agree with it. Now, there's a lot of arguments. Well, Deshaun Watson's still in the league. Why is he allowed to play? And that's two things are true at once. This guy Deshaun Watson, if there is something going on, if the league believes it, he should absolutely be out of the league. but that doesn't mean the other thing is untrue, right? Like Calvin Ridley was betting. He gets suspended. You get disciplined for that. You don't give an inch there. I kind of agree with it. I happen to agree with the gambling issue because it could compromise the game that we know and love.
Yeah, I kind of agree. You kind of need to have the gambling thing because if people start betting on games and they significantly can influence the game, then yeah, you kind of have to like draw a firm line in the sand on like where the league stands on like gambling. Some things are okay, but they can't allow other things. And so as long as the league continues this way, I have no problem with it. I think this was an unfortunate situation for Jameson Williams to be caught up in it, but at the same time, you have to be aware of what you can and can't get away with in the NFL, specifically if millions are on the line. It is what it is. You're too smart to allow something like this to happen. So hopefully these guys will learn from it and move on from this in a better direction. And thankfully, they all didn't get a whole year like Calvin Ridley.
So, yeah, there is one thing I want to touch on. I don't think that – I mean, I think while I'm really kind of like pro-gambling, I would argue that you shouldn't be allowed to bet on games you're playing, and you shouldn't be allowed to bet on other NFL games or anything NFL-related that you might have like insider knowledge on. But I believe once it's out of the realm of the NFL, go ham. I literally don't care. I mean, if it creeps back into the NFL, that's one thing. But if it's related to the NFL, no, I'm sorry. You lay down the law.
I don't know.
If they're friends with, like other people in different like organizations like the NBA, they could ask them to like throw games if they're betting on it.
Well, see, here's the thing. That's not an NFL problem, and that's an NBA problem. And the NBA can handle it their way.
Yes, but what if there's a deal that comes into play? Let's say an NFL player bets on an NBA player, and then he says, "Okay, I'll do this if you go and do that in the NFL." Right?
And the odds of this happening are?
Doesn't matter about the odds.
Okay, and how do we know it's not happening now?
Give an inch.
We're opening
probably already happening.
It could be.
Because, look, I believe that these players gamble. Believe me. I mean, look, you bet on the Kentucky Derby, right? I mean, how many NFL players do we see there every year? And the NFL does nothing about it. The NFL picks and chooses. And to your point, I'm not saying it couldn't happen. I'm just saying it probably already does.
So we just allow it. Well, we do know that it happens because players get caught. But once they get caught, then they're disciplined for it for a year. You get a year without pay. I mean, that's crippling to Calvin Ridley's career. He was going to get traded somewhere, and he was going to have quite the career wherever he was. I mean, that's career altering for him. And other players are going to look at that and they're going to say, okay, maybe I shouldn't do that. I mean, Pete Rose got hit the hardest. He's out of baseball for life. And maybe it was an overcorrection with the Black Sox scandal earlier on in the league. The MLB does have a reputation of hitting players hard with suspensions. But I mean, you just can't give an inch. You really can't, because I don't even want to take a chance at this potentially ruining the game.
I mean, it's already happening, and the league literally just picks and chooses who gets in trouble. Because let me tell you something. If Tom Brady was betting on games, we would not hear about it.
Yeah, because he actually followed the league policy when it comes to things like that. He wouldn't be dumb enough to get caught.
All right, then who would be? Because let me tell you something. If it's a star, like a really big name, I'm sorry, they're not going to get in any kind of trouble. Or what about Aaron Rodgers? We all know Aaron Rodgers would, and I don't think they'd suspend him.
We don't
Jameson Williams and Calvin Ridley just got suspended. Pete Rose is out of baseball.
I know you did not just say those are big names. You don't want to play this game.
They're
not big names in comparison to Tom Brady.
Not in comparison to those two, but those are still pretty notable
Jameson
players.
Williams, the man who only has one catch. I mean, I'll give you that for Calvin Ridley, but he's not even a top 10 receiver.
Right now.
I'm talking about that elite tier. If those guys did it, they would not get in trouble. And I bet you they already do.
I think they would get in trouble. It's just that you don't hear anything because when they do gamble, it's within the league policy.
And honestly, I do think Calvin Ridley's a top 10 receiver, just for the record. when he's at his best. But he was injured the last time he played for half the year, and then he was hit with a suspension. But before then, 100%.
He can't be top 10. Decision making is not there.
I've seen some of that, but that could come down to his betting.
Whatchamacallit? Before we wrap this up, I remember Adam's intro, and I thought of one better. I was going to say one commander leads 5 Lions into the cage, known as the NFL suspension.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah, that came up.
I like that.
You'll have to hear it.
We'll let you be the main host from now on.
No.
All right. I want to change gears here. We're going to kind of stay on the topic of these suspensions, except veer more towards Jameson Williams now that he's come up, and what the Lions do without him, because they're going to be without him for about 6 games, but that's it. And so, do you go for one in the draft? Do you go free agency? Do you stick with what you have? That's all next. This is the Fumblerooski Podcast.
Way down the field to Watkins. Sammy Watkins for the touchdown.
This is the Fumblerooski Podcast by Power 88 and Secret Weapon Consulting. Adam Wright, CJ Medeiros, Justin Tucker. So, Jameson Williams is among several players who have been hit with a suspension due to the NFL league's gambling policy. For some reason, that can't come out correctly today. But what's that?
League's gambling policy.
League's gamble. It's just a mouthful. That's all.
Yeah.
But so the Lions now on their wide receiver roster, they already lost DJ Chark because they only had him signed for 1 year.
Mm-hmm.
They traded TJ Hawkinson, who was a tight end, granted, during this past season. So really their only legitimate pass catcher, who's a great one, by the way, very, very good one, is Amon-Ra St. Brown. So without Jameson Williams, it'll be 6 games, but this is a team that was kind of looking to contend. We've been talking about all off season long. So this is kind of a wrench thrown in the machine here. So what do you do here? Because you want to be able to get off to a good start in these first 6 games. So what do you do? There's free agency. There's a few names you were talking about off camera. There's the trade market. A couple guys who could be dealt to the Lions. There's one in particular named DeAndre Hopkins. That would be a bigger fish to fry. But you could also go to the draft, which is less than a week away. And now, do you use one of their first round picks on it, which they were planning to use on probably defense, or do you go with one of their day 2 picks? To be honest, I think they were going to go with a wide receiver anyways. Even if you have Jameson Williams, they still don't have much depth at the wide receiver position. It's just Jameson Williams and Amon-Ra St. Brown. It's just those 2. So they were probably going to do it already, but do they take one earlier now? Do they trade up to pick one? So I just wanted to get your thoughts on that. I'll throw it to you first.
Oh man, they could go in so many directions, but I think they should go in the draft and either draft a wide receiver with similar qualities to Jameson Williams or draft a tight end. That's the way I'm feeling right now, because I was thinking, you know what? Could you imagine the Lions drafting tight end Darnell Washington out of Georgia? I'm not going to lie. I kind of like that the more and more I think about that. I could, especially with Dan Campbell as the head coach, I could see him pulling the trigger on that, especially since they don't have like a proven tight end since they traded TJ Hawkinson. The way I see it, if they get Darnell Washington, they got a 6-man on the line of scrimmage as a tight end for blocking and another possible pass catcher, and he's going to be a mother to bring down. So the way I'm looking at it, As a matter of fact, I'm talking myself into it. They should draft Darnell Washington with one of those picks.
One of their first round picks, right?
Yeah,
Because that's where
I
he
don't
would
think
go.
he'll be there in the second.
Oh, maybe.
He's too big and too athletic to make it to the second.
All right.
Like,
so Tuck
he's
has him
reserved.
drafting a tight end in the first
Yeah.
round. CJ, what are they doing?
I think they take a tight end, but I think Michael Mayer.
No.
Why not? Why not?
Darnell Washington's athleticism and his frame.
And his only 45 catches in his 3 years in Georgia. Sure, buddy.
Because
He's literally the third best tight end behind Kincaid and Mayer. Don't get it twisted.
Georgia has the best tight end coming out in the draft next year, don't they?
Yeah, we'll see. Anyway, so when I look at the Lions receiving room, Jameson Williams not there. Stanley Berryhill, not anymore, you don't. But see, here's the thing. You have Amon-Ra, but I didn't realize this. You also have Marvin Jones Jr., Khalif Raymond, and Josh Reynolds, which they're not great, but they're pretty serviceable depth pieces, especially Reynolds and Raymond, who's been coming into his own as of late. And I am adamant that this is not something that you trade DeAndre Hopkins for, because that's like a permanent solution to a temporary problem. I mean, yeah. So I'm just saying, I don't think you go round 1 for a receiver. I don't know, maybe in round 3 you pick up someone like Jonathan Mingo or Xavier Hutchinson. I think that could work. But above all, I think that Josh Reynolds and Khalif Raymond are pretty good options. I mean, so first and foremost, take a look at Josh Reynolds, who last year is wide receiver 3, got 479 yards and 3 touchdowns. I won't lie, that's not bad for literally a receiver. And then then you have Khalif Raymond, who was wide receiver 4 to start the year, and he ended up with 616 yards. So these guys aren't exactly scrubs. I'll leave it at that.
Yeah. So I completely forgot about those two. They do have those guys, and they're not bad. They'll still want something more at the wide receiver position, because that seems so. You have Amon-Ra St. Brown, Marvin Jones Jr. We'll see how he'll be at his age. Josh Reynolds. That's not bad, but if you're looking to contend this year, you might want something more. And I'm just looking at I agree. I think I offered up DeAndre Hopkins as an option, but it's just an option. I agree. I don't think they should go for DeAndre Hopkins as well, because that's kind of a commitment. But there's some guys on this market who aren't bad. It's not like the wide receiver market right now for free agency is great, but so the number one guy is Kenny Golladay, who got released. He's still 29. And I know he had a nightmare of a stint over with the Giants, but let's not forget what he did in his first stint with Detroit. And then he would be coming back to a better situation there. It wouldn't be bad. I just hope there's no bad blood between those two. Maybe there is, because the Lions did let him walk. Maybe it was just the price tag. I don't know. But if I were them and there's no bad blood there, I would roll the dice on Kenny Golladay. There's also Jarvis Landry. He's 30. You could get something out of him. Other guys include Sammy Watkins, Brashad Perriman. These are Demarcus Robinson. I mean, those last couple names are kind of more on the level of Marvin Jones and Josh Reynolds, but there's some options there as well. And like I said, I think they were probably going to take a wide receiver in this draft at some point anyways. I just didn't think it was going to be this early. Now, a tight end in the first round, that wouldn't be the worst idea, because that is a position where they don't have anything in there anymore. I wonder if Hawkinson just wanted out, because I wouldn't have traded him. I mean, you're a team on the up and up, and Hawkinson's still relatively young. But you did, so now we're in this position. Yeah, with that late first round pick, or it's still in the top half of the draft, but you could use that for a tight end. That would be a good spot to take one of the guys who is there for the tight end position. The only problem you would have is that tight ends do take some time to develop. So it might be a year or so before these guys actually pan out and become what they could potentially be, because it just takes a while for tight ends for some reason. All right, but I do need to make a choice though, because I've been kind of
sitting on the fence here.
I've been sitting on the fence. I have.
Any day now.
I think free agency. I think Kenny Golladay, if he's around and he doesn't hate them, because he is a former Lion, they should roll the dice on him. He'll probably be cheap, and I think he has a high ceiling, relatively low floor, but I think if you go out and you grab Kenny Golladay, it couldn't hurt. It couldn't hurt. It'll help them. I think that'll help them. Worst case scenario, he still has the drop syndrome, and you just have Jared Goff just not throw to him. That's it. Go to Amon-Ra St. Brown. He
can't just be a decoy if he can't catch. He has to come out the game. And you're just wasting money at that point. Yeah, but he would come cheaper, because now he has less value than when he left Detroit in the first place. Because when he left, he was actually a pretty good wide receiver. Yes.
Now, that last season he was there, in the games he did play, he was pretty good. The problem was he was always getting hurt. So that was the issue, which is why Detroit didn't want to pay him anymore. Mm-hmm. But when he was healthy, boy, that guy could play. He could play. He could get not only was he able to get the yardage, but he had a nose for the end zone too. And if you get even, let's say 70% of what he was, 60% even, then that's a solid wide receiver too to Amon-Ra St. Brown until Jameson Williams comes back refreshed and ready to go. Then you have Jameson Williams, Amon-Ra St. Brown, and Kenny Golladay. That's a contending team right there, especially in this NFC. I think that's the way I'm going to go.
All right.
Oh, yeah.
That's my spot. All right.
Washington for the win.
We could do that too. We'll do that too. They'll have
Michael Mayer. Excuse me. Sorry.
Jared Goff will have all these different targets to throw to, and it will be as if Jameson Williams never left, but he did, because he got in trouble with the gambling policy. All right.
No one's as fast as Jameson Williams. That's the issue.
What?
No one's as fast as Jameson Williams. That's the issue.
Yeah. Well, they'll only be without him for 6 games, so it'll be all right. We'll be okay. They'll do fine. All right. So we're going to change topics here. We're going on to our main coverage for today in the NFL draft. Talk about the most underrated draft prospects in this class. You won't want to miss this one. It's next. This is the Fumblerooski Podcast.
Here's Edelman broken up, and the pass is no sign yet. Edelman comes down with a football. They're saying it's a catch. This is caught. Diggs! Sideline! Touchdown! Unbelievable! Swings it way down the field to Watkins. Sammy Watkins for the touchdown!
You're listening to the Fumblerooski Podcast by Power Radiate and Secret Weapon Consulting. Adam Wright, CJ Medeiros, Justin Tucker. So, it's a lot of different prospects in this draft. Very deep at several different positions. We're going to talk about who we think are the most underrated draft prospects. So, plenty of them on either side of the ball. CJ, I'll throw it to you, my draft guy. Who's your most underrated guy?
Thank you, Adam. You brought that up very well. Some would consider me a draft guy. I know I would. But let me tell you something. Let me tell you what I believe.
It's also your description, too. So
yes, that is correct. That it was a title that was given to me. That's neither here nor there.
Given to you by yourself.
Yes, that is correct. But that's neither here nor there, like I said. So here's the deal. I did some thinking, And in the first round, you got guys, receivers like Quentin Johnston, Zay Flowers, Jordan Addison, Jackson Smith, and Jigba. Those are good. But who's not getting his love? Tennessee wide receiver Jalen Hyatt. This kid, oh my God. Last college season has 1,267 receiving yards, literally averaging 18.9 yards per catch, and 15 touchdowns. Keep in mind, this was all in 12 starts. And his NFL comparison, I think, is correct. Deshaun Jackson, this kid is fast. He's agile. He's got a 4.4 40-yard dash and a 1.5 10-yard split and a vertical jump of 40 inches. This kid, he's got the speed. He's got the agility. He can fool guys when he's like going deep. He can make his cuts very well. He can just go past the man coverage. His routes are actually, his route tree is limited, I will admit, but the routes that he does run, oh boy. And he's especially dangerous when they do those pitch and catch things, like those wide receiver screens. Kick it out to him on the side, watch him go. He's not the greatest blocker, but he's willing. He puts his heart into everything. And I honestly believe that he could end up sneaking into the first round.
He's going to be a Raven.
Oh, tough.
I wouldn't be upset if he was. I wouldn't be upset if he snuck into the first round.
You should be, dude. If y'all draft him, you should be elated. That kid's going to be a beast.
I hope so. We drafted him. I mean, when I look at him, when I saw that killer game from Alabama, I was like, "There's no way he'll last until the second round." So if he does get picked by us, I'll be happy with it. But for me, my underrated draft pick, and again, I'm going out there. I'm looking through the field, and I decided, let me go to quarterback because he already chose the wide receiver spot, and I didn't want to just double dip there. So I went quarterback. And I'm not picking one of the first four quarterbacks that are going into the first round because, let's face it, all of them are going first round because that's how needy people are for quarterbacks. I decided, who's a project quarterback outside of Hendon Hooker and Anthony Richardson that I believe could be a starter in the NFL for a couple of games while a potential injury happens to a starter. And I thought to myself, who could fill those shoes? And I thought Dorian Thompson-Robinson from UCLA, the quarterback from UCLA. The reason I say that is because I see the skill set of Kyler Murray, but I don't think he's there yet mentally or as far as like accuracy wise. So I think he would have to sit down a year. And that's the problem, which is why I don't want him to go to Arizona. Because I know he would start immediately for Kyler Murray. But if they want to see what they have, I think they'll draft him just as a stead place for Kyler Murray. Because I see the similar skill sets within those two. But overall, I just want him to sit for 1 year. Because within the next year, I think he'll be better than what he is currently.
Okay.
Now, Justin, let me just say I totally agree. Dorian Thompson-Robinson from UCLA, look, I'll admit below average size, but it doesn't matter. This kid's extremely athletic. Mm-hmm. And his arm's not that bad either. He can get through his progressions. His spiral's good. And one of his biggest strengths is how he respects defenses. He's not going to force anything. He's a solid decision maker, but if need be, he can kind of pepper in his passes over linebackers and below safeties. The only things that I'd say are, yeah, you hit the nail right on the head, though. He's very raw. But I do believe you give him a year, somebody gets hurt, he could step in and win you a few games.
That's what I believe. He's just so talented. I just need him to wait a year, and I think he'll be able to explode. Pause.
Wow.
All right. So I had to think long and hard for this one.
Pause.
Because to find underrated draft prospects, it's hard. Because there's a lot of players in this draft, and when you say underrated, that usually means there's a high probability that they won't be all that good, and you're going to hear all the buzz from the players who are going to be either sure things or have high upside. But I look at the running back position. Bijan Robinson has been getting all of this hype, rightfully so. Don't get me wrong. He got over 1,500 yards. and he is serviceable, pretty good as a pass catcher. But no love for Jahmyr Gibbs, who is going to be my pick tonight. So this guy, not only does he have an ability to rush with the ball, he can also catch it, which is extremely important for him to be an all-around back. I think this guy, if he winds up being drafted into the right position where he's going to be a workhorse back, he'll be one of the better backs in the league. Fantasy football owners will be lining up to draft this guy, at least in the next couple of years, because he's going to be underrated. He's underrated right now. He still has a little bit of hype, but not nearly as much as he should be getting. And Bijan Robinson, this is no shade towards Bijan. He's going to be a really good back, maybe great. He's been looked at as the second coming of Saquon Barkley, and he could be. I mean, well, it's not like Barkley's done much in the NFL
whoa. Let's
really
not
stack up to that.
Here. Let's move on. Let's not slander Saquon here.
I'm not slandering Saquon. I'm just calling it how it is.
He's in New York.
Exactly.
All right, let's move on, fellas.
Lots of injuries, and he's only had really 2-3 legitimate wide receiver, running back 1 years. It's just been a little underwhelming. But I'm not saying no shade at all. No shade towards Bijan either. That kid's going to be a stud. I'm just saying, Jahmyr Gibbs, don't sleep on this guy. Don't sleep on this kid, especially coming out of Alabama, which is known to be a running back school. This kid's going to be good, and he's projected to go in the second round. Like, this guy should absolutely get some more love. So that's my guy, Jahmyr Gibbs. If he's in the second round and the Patriots are on the clock, I would like them to pick him. I wouldn't mind.
Yeah, I wouldn't hate it, Adam, as a Pats fan. And real quick, I do want to point out that I love Jahmyr Gibbs. He is the prototypical do-it-all back. He's fast. He runs a 4.36 40, and he's got a 1.52 10-yard split. And he can create separation. He can line him up in the slot. He can catch out of the backfield, or he can run. He can make you miss in the open field. And even in the kick return game, he's got a lot of potential. No matter how you slice it, this guy is dangerous, and I honestly see shades of someone like Alvin Kamara in his game.
Exactly. And Kamara has had quite the career as a New Orleans Saint in the NFL. So just saying. And honestly, I would make the argument that so far Alvin Kamara's had a better career than Saquon Barkley in the NFL. Just saying.
Yeah, you could argue that.
I'm sorry. Say that one more time.
Boy.
I think Alvin Kamara so far has had a better career in the NFL than Saquon Barkley has.
Career. That's tough. I think yes. But the problem with Kamara is he's never rushed for 1,000 yards. I don't think. I think he's been close, but I don't think he's ever surpassed it. Let me just make sure.
And yet he still has more career rushing yards than Saquon.
Because he's been in the league longer.
Wait,
only
really?
by a year. Only by a year, but yeah. I believe so. Were they drafted the same time?
No,
they
If
were.
it was, it was by a year. If it was by a year, because I'm pretty sure it was 2017 when he was first drafted. But I mean, just Alvin Kamara's all-around play. I think that's very comparable to Jahmyr Gibbs on what he's capable of being, because he can rush the ball and he can catch it, and he hasn't been world beating at either side, but he's very good at both. So that screams Alvin Kamara to me, and he can get to the end zone as well, which is also Alvin Kamara. I think that's a good comparison. Good job, CJ.
Yeah, and they are a year apart, because I remember Kamara's crazy 2017 draft selection with the Saints, because it was just a crazy year for the Saints, because they got Lattimore, Ramczyk, and Kamara in that same draft, and Marcus Williams. That was an insane thing they pulled off.
That was an important draft for them too, because
that's what set them up to go to the NFC Championship game and almost make the Super Bowl. Those draft picks.
That was supposed because they were lacking on defense for years, and they were looking for those players, and they got them. They got them, so they did pretty well.
And Marcus Williams decided to miss the tackle on the rest is history.
And the pass interference call.
Oh, yeah. Who could forget?
Oh, geez. Yeah. That Saints team is just cursed, man. And now they lost their Hall of Fame quarterback. Oh,
Yeah.
well. All right. Well, that's basically all the material that we had pre-planned for today. But do we have anything else before we end the show tonight?
Other than go Celtics? No. And go Lakers.
Go Celtics. I was just checking up on them. At halftime, well, it's almost halftime. Oh, shoot. Yeah, the Hawks are up 72-64. So you guys are gonna watch this episode, and you're gonna say, "Oh, like," because you're gonna see this like in an hour, maybe few hours, and then the Hawks won by a lot, or the Celtics blew doors. But all right, that's neither here nor there. All right, that'll do it for us tonight. Thank you for listening to us. We have new episodes out on Tuesdays and Fridays at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel. We also have all our episodes available on Spotify, Spreaker, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Google Podcasts, and so much more. Also, be sure to follow our Instagram at Fumblerooski_podcast to keep up with our podcast and latest coverage on the NFL. Otherwise, we'll see you next week. Over and out.